Hello, today I'm going to talk about making selections inside Affinity software. To make a selection we can use a lot of different tools because selections are used for masking, painting in specific places, adding fills, cutting objects out, moving objects. There's a lot of things that we use selections for, and to be fair, there's a lot of tools that we can use to making selections. With the tools, we've got the selection brush, we've got the flood tool, better known as the magic wand, we've got the freehand tool, better known as the lasso tool, we've got marquee tools. If we come up to the top, we can select all layers, deselect layers, we can select by colour ranges, Tonal Range, Alpha Range, we can even select by sampled colours. We can manipulate our selections or refine them. We can even make selections through channels. We can make selections from the blues, the greens, the reds. As you can see, there's lots of ways to make selections. So what we'll do, we will get started, and we'll start off with the most common tool that everyone should be familiar with, and that's the selection brush. How the selection brush works is pretty simple. It works like a brush. Whatever you want to make a selection of, you just paint over and it will start to make a selection. If we come up to the modes, we've got add and subtract. If we click on the subtract, if we ever make a selection like this and go too far, we can just click on it and it will minus that selection from what we've just done. But to save time, instead of going up to the subtract, if you hold the Alt key, and then that also says that we want to minus that selection from what we've just made. Next to our mode, we've got the width. That's the size of our brush. We can make our brush larger, smaller, and here's a quicker way. If you go to your keyboard, under the plus and minus key, you've got two brackets. You've got your right bracket, what makes your brush larger, and the left bracket makes it smaller. And then if we go past that, we've got snap to edges. What that does is, whenever we go to make a selection of something, like say this lady here, the software will say, right, we think we know what you want, so instead of you having to paint right up to the edge, we'll determine the edge you want and we'll snap to that edge. If that's turned off, and say like we want to select this skirt, it doesn't snap to it and you've got to paint around the edge of that skirt. That's why that's always best left on, but sometimes you do need to turn it off. But right now I'm going to leave it turned on. And then the next one, we've got all layers. While that's unticked, we're only doing this layer. But if we was to turn it off, we would be selecting from all what we've got. So we'll be selecting from this layer, and showing the background would also be selecting from this layer as well that we don't want. So if we turn that off, it comes back to we'll only be selecting from this layer. Soft edges, it's a new feature that came in Affinity 1.8. What that is, it's meant to save us time by not having to refine our selections all the time. So if you've got something that's got quite a lot of straight edges, you shouldn't have to go into refine. It should say, right, we'll smooth these edges out to make them soft so it's a better selection. But if you're ever selecting people, I would still use the refine. The refine we will come back to later and take a look at that later on once we've gone through a few more tools. So for now, if I just deselect her and come over to our second image, and I'm going to click on the flood tool or the magic wand tool. I'll put it back to its default, so if you've not changed yours it should be matching now with the tolerance on 20. How the flood tool works is, if you click on whatever you're working on and it samples that pixel, and the tolerance levels works by illuminance levels. So with 20 illuminance levels higher or lower than the pixel we selected, it will select the next one to it. And because continuous is turned on, that means it will only select the pixel what is touching that pixel what we've just selected. If we turn that off and click, then it says we want to select all the pixels within that layer and they don't need to be touching. So for now, for this one, I'm going to turn it on and click, and as you can see, we select parts of the round metal ball. But if we turn the tolerance down, and the only way you know by this, no matter how long you spend in the software, it's all guesswork here, and just click, and it's about working backwards from that. So yes, by lowering it down a fair bit, we've got it a bit better, but not quite there. So we can lower it down again and click, and we come to that. Now that looks a lot better. And if you think, well, we'll try one more. If we go one more, we started selecting parts of the background around the edge. So go back up to 7 and click, and it starts looking that bit better. We can still go into the refined edges. We can do the current layer, or if we tick that, we can do all layers. And like before, we've got add, we've got new. So if we click again, it will do us a new selection. If we go to add, it will keep that selection, and we click, and it will make a selection of the other part with the same levels on what we've just chose. And we can keep going. If we want to subtract, we go up to subtract and click, and it takes it off. Or we can go back to Alt and click, and it will minus it. The intersect, what that does is, whenever you make a selection, if that's ticked on and we make another selection, you can only make a selection within the selection what you've already made. So that's how that one is. I'll go back to new, and the refine, like before, I will come back to that one. We'll go on to our next tool, so I'll control and deselect that and come back to our first image. I'll go back, and we'll first look at the ellipse marquee tool. Now for this, you just draw and then let it go, and then you can move your selection. But what happens if you make a selection like that and now you want to go even further? You've got the same tools as before, add, but if we add, it's still not going to be a great selection. So we go back, and then we've got subtract. Again, we can feather the anti-alias. I will look at that, but if we go back to new and make a selection, you've got control and alt where you can go out. But say you want to move that, we can move it, but we can't add to it. But here's a nice little trick for you. If you come up to the top, and this little like Japanese flag, it's the quick mask. If we click in it and then go to our move tool, we can now sample that, and we can stretch it out to where we want it. And as long as we're in the quick mask mode, it won't change that. It won't turn it into a selection until we come out of a quick mask. So say we go there. Now if we enter exit in the quick mask, we've now got our selection, and we are free to move it around. So I'll put that back, deselect, and press the right buttons, not C, and press D. Now we've got the square, well, the rectangle marquee tool. That does the same as the ellipse, but it's a square, and you can manipulate that with the quick mask as well by going there and moving it. And we've also got the column marquee tools. What that does is it's good for selecting lines, but these I'm not a big fan of, and we've got rows. The reason why I don't use these is because what we can do with these, we can also do with the rectangle marquee tool. If you click that, and as you can see, we can get the exact same look as what we had with the rows. We've covered, so that's them three. If we come over to our end image, and the next one is if you hold Control and click on your layer, it will make a selection. How that selection works is anything more than 50% it will select. Anything lower, anything with 50% and lower, it won't select. And that works with luminance. What is luminance? Luminance is considered the human perception of brightness, and then you've got illuminance, and that is measured by the amount of light striking a surface. So there's lots of different things how they can work, and if we come out of that, Control D, and come back, the luminance levels, we can select them. So the luminance is measured by light, so that's all the bits where we see light. And to make sure of that, if we come to our move tool, hold Alt and Control and click on it, it selects all the luminance levels in our photo, and that's how you select your luminance within your photo. Right now I'm going to pause this, and I'm going to go make a drink. So if you want to make a drink as well and have a little break, because we have gone on for 12 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll finish this off, but we still got a lot more to look at. So I will see you in, well, for you it'll be a couple of seconds. For me it's going to be about 20 minutes. So thank you, and I will speak to you very soon. Hello, I'm back. If you had a break like I did, it's been about 20-25 minutes. I hope you enjoyed your coffee. If you continued watching, because for you it's only been a couple of seconds, we will get straight back into it. And we'll come straight back to over to the channels. If you haven't got the channels, if you come up to view, come down to studio, and then come down to channels and click on it, it will pop up. How the channels work, so say we want the composite of red. If we right click and load to pixel selection, load to selection, it will load everything within that percentage. The channels work by percentages. Anything that's 50% and under won't be selected within the composite red. Anything that is over 50%, 51% upwards will get selected. And the same works for the greens, and anything under the 50% won't be selected, anything over will be. If you want to add multiple channels together, if you right click on that, instead of loading to pixel selection, because it will only load that one channel, add to pixel selection, and it can then it will add them to into the same selection. Or you decide you don't want that, you can subtract from the pixel selection. And then we'll go with the blues. We'll just load that to a pixel selection. And then if you want to move it into a mask, a quick mask only, if you come down to the bottom, we can click on the quick mask, and it'll put it into a quick mask. Then we can change it if we want. And to get the quick mask off, you can either come back down here and click on the quick mask, or come up top and toggle the quick mask off, or press Q. That's how the channels work. We have got other ways of making selections as well. We can come up to select and come down to the colour range. But first we need to make sure our background's selected, or we won't be selecting nothing. Then come up to select, colour range, and select the reds. How this works, Affinity Photo takes that and puts it into a range. So anything within the range of red, what it determines is in that range, it will select. So it's determined that there's only a few parts of this image that is determined within that range, and it turns them into a selection. If we go back and do the same for greens, it determines that there's a lot more that comes in that range of green. So it selects a lot more. And we can do the same for the blues, and it selects a lot more of the blues. Then if we come down to Tonal Range, these all work within the ranges. So if we select the midtones, it determines what the midtones are and what comes in the range of the midtones. Like when we're doing when you do curves and you change the midtones, where you add your point in the middle and move your curves up or down to affect the midtones. If you was to do that on this image, this is the area that you would be affecting. And if we go Control D to deselect that, and we want to look what the curves would affect from the shadows, and we'll be selecting all that for the shadows. So it determines that this area becomes the shadows, and it falls within what it's determined to be the shadows for ranges. And the same comes with the highlights. So we go back to select, tunnel, and highlights. It selects that all this part here are all highlights. So if we was to make the highlights brighter, would only be affecting these parts only. So go Control D. And then we've got the alpha ranges. Select fully transparent. What that will do is it will only select the parts that are transparent. If we go on to select partially transparent, that works out if we've got 20% opacity, it will select 20% that is transparent. And then if we select opaque, it will select the whole image. And we can select from color range. So if we click the white and it's on and it goes 15%, this works the same as the magic wand. And you can keep going up and selecting as much as what you want, or you can lower it down, and it works in just the same way. If you go down to 0, then obviously you're not going to select no as well. But that's how you can select by sampled colours. Pretty much that's all the ways we can do selections. But we can also manipulate and refine our selections. So if we go back to the very first tool what we used off and make a quick selection of her. And we come up to select, and we'll look at the refined edges first. You can get to the refine by clicking select and going to the refine, or you can just click on refine. That was up here. The border width, that determines how big the selection is gonna be determined from around what we've just selected. That can be good for when we select like the hair. If we want to go after parts of her hair, you can just paint that in and it will select the best it can. The smooth, what is the smooth? Well, the smooth determines the curvature of the selection that we've just made. And the feather, it works on opacity. So think of it as like a overlay where we're painting from soft to hard. So we go 5 pixels, it determines 5 pixels inwards from the line. So the softest part is going to be at the line and it's going to move in 5 pixels. And for the ramp, you can't see the difference on here. It moves the selection in and out, pretty much what that does. So, like, the matte is what we're on now. It analyses and then attempts to separate the foreground from the background. Well, what's the foreground and the background? Think of it as like layers. When we're trying to separate an object from the layer, we're trying to move on to a separate layer. And so what we've selected is classed as the foreground, and whatever else is left in the image that we don't want is the background. So if we click on the foreground and move our overlay to black matte, we can now paint on her and it will select more of her. But if we click on the background, it will paint more of the background. Where if we click on the background, we don't want to be painting on her. We're saying like this, we're now painting to the background, say right, this is the background, that's the bit that we don't want. And you can refine your edges fairly good with that if you want. And then you've got feather that we've all already discussed. Then your pixels for your brush size here. The other previews we've got white matte, so it leaves our image as normal but puts the background in white. Or we can change our image to white and leave the background black. Or we can do it as what it would look like if we was to move it to a different layer with just that without the background. And we can change all that selection by, if we click on mask, it will instantly put it into a mask. Or we can go onto new layer and it will put the selection onto a new layer, but that's all. Or we can click new layer with a mask and it will move it onto a new layer and apply a mask to it. Like that, eventually, once the system catches up. So we've still got our background and it's masked it straight out. If we come over to here and if we hold, get rid of that and hold Control and click on our name to put a selection around our name and go to select and go down to grow and shrink. What grow and shrink does is it can make our selection bigger or smaller, and so we can enlarge our selection. And then say we wanted a new layer, we could open a new layer, give it a new fill, and it will only go around that selection. Or we can drop it down to say like 20 pixels. And now what we can do is click apply, open up a new layer and give that layer a new fill. And we'll go that and then deselect. And we've now got that. And say we wanted to do what we've just done again, we can now click that, go back up to select, grow and shrink, and we can shrink it down even more, say another 20 pixels, apply, and we'll go, not that colour, we'll go to a new layer, a new fill layer, and we'll change that fill layer to there, and then deselect. And we've now added another part to my name, or if you put your name down there, so we can shrink and grow our selections. If we come back up to select, we can feather and smooth and refine that we've all already talked about. And I think that's every way that we've covered how we can make a selection. If this video has helped you, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not subscribed, please do subscribe and hit the bell to get notifications of our next upload. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.